YeahThisMilk, starring
Sincere poet, speaker, author of the 30 Love Laws, and host of the Arts and Culture Show. But most importantly, I'm a husband and your brother. She obeys my every command. Instrument in hand and plan in mind as I stroke her from the front, side, and behind. Sometimes not even being able to sleep. You see, that's just how deep it is for me. I am forever infatuated and eternally elated to have known her for so long, yet the loving is so strong, it's as if we met yesterday. My insides burn with a passion for her as I can't stand to be away. She's living proof that blessings do exist because I see her every day. And I say that to say that she makes me feel some kind of way when we into what we're doing, strictly business, no time for play. See, when I'm down and out at times, she's hell-bent on making me feel okay. When I'm inside of her at times, she overcomes me with emotion. She's never worried about me stepping out on her because she has my undying devotion. I'm drunk off her spirit as if the shit's some kind of love potion. I'm sailing in her ocean, making every attempt to reach that place, and she uses me to her advantages, still manages to keep a smile on my face. But she has to be smitten with me too, you see, because she just won't leave me alone. I guess that's what happens when you're giving it to her right. You're making a foundation to build that on. See, my heart, it beats to the rhythm of her song. And whenever she moves, I feel an obligation to tag along. And right now, I'm a complete man because she's made this house her home. She is the orchestrator of these soulful words. I'm perfect for her and she's perfect for me. Her name, although she could go by many, quite simply, I call her poetry. So this that you're about to hear right now is coming from a man who owns his time, who owns the space that he creates. So basically, you're dealing with a free black man. So some of the shit that you're gonna hear, you've never heard before. So I hope you're ready to listen.
Hey, brother. Where were you raised?
I was raised in a space called Jackson, Mississippi. I was born there 1979. And my upbringing was partially in the city and in the country, in a space called Madison County, just outside of Jackson.
How long you been writing?
Just over 25 years now, man. I started writing as a way to just get outside of that space that I was in mentally, being able to express myself in a different kind of way.
Or whatever, you have any type of other arts you do? Any type of other talents besides?
Yeah, man. Actually, what I started doing, man, is I was a visual artist. So I started drawing. I started using the pen. I started using the pencil, drawing with paints and all of that stuff as a way to express myself because I wasn't so confident in my speech. You know, I used to have a bit of a speech impediment, so that kind of stopped me and it kind of stifled me. It affected my confidence and all of that stuff. I know it's crazy based on what you see now, but what it is proof of being able to overcome. So I was a visual artist, and now what I do is I take words and I use the same colors, I use the same strokes, but I'm doing it with language.
Yeah, that's one of your shirts right there, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Greatness on display.
Yeah.
And what I'm pushing is the idea that we're all creators, we're all creatives, and I don't want us to marginalize that anymore. One of the things that's led to me being a free black man is the fact that I am a creative. I can create things that take care of myself and my wife, and I have been doing that for some time now. I'm going on my 20th year, being in that space of a creator and owning it. Yeah, so that's what this shirt's about. That's the idea.
What's the first poem you wrote? Do you remember that?
Oh man, I wrote so many short poems. I started out playing around with stuff like roses are red and violets are blue and that kind of stuff. Always being one to be a class clown type. And I really started to get a flow when people started to respond to the poetry. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe this is something that I can do or that I can use now moving forward. So it just organically morphed into what I did as a creative. So I started feeling less of a hunger to use the stroke as far as creating visually, And then what I started doing, man, is just start writing down my thoughts, expressing it. And it really became more of a thing for me. So each and every time I would sit down, I would have a thought, and I would feel a need to express it right there on the spot. So I always had that pen and that pad, and I would go to wherever my space was to create, and then that's when I would start jotting down my thoughts. And sometime it rhymed, sometime it didn't, but the whole outlook was all about just me continuing to express myself, to be able to feel free.
When did you know like, oh, I'm good? When did it hit you, like, because we all have a poem and it's like, okay, I get it now. I figured it out. I know how to write now.
Well, actually, I haven't had that feeling yet, actually.
You haven't?
Nah. I actually haven't had that feeling yet. Like, all I do is express myself, and if it touches people, that's fine. Now, what I do know is how I feel as a poet. Mm-hmm. And I say that I don't know because whether somebody feels that you're good or not, like, it's a relative thing. Now, what I can tell you is that I do study the art form. I take it seriously. It's a responsibility now. So I see it differently than a lot of poets. So for me, it's not about whether I'm good to somebody, bad or great, so forth and so on. For me, what it's all about is me expressing myself, me living in my truth, and me being able to encourage people to do the same.
Okay. When you said you studied,
Yeah.
break down what you mean when you say you study, because some younger artists coming up, they don't know what you mean.
Absolutely. When I say that I study it, it's as simple as going back to where did poetry come from? The very first people that used poetry, what was the outlook on why they started using poetry? Like, where did it come from? Who were the creators? What was that all about? So when I say I study it, I go back to the Imhoteps. Like, I go back to people that predate myself and you. Mm-hmm. Like, I go back to the Langston Hugheses and my favorite poet, Dr. Maya Angelou, rest in love. So for me, it's about studying the ones before me and being inspired by the ones that's coming after me. So that's what I mean by being a student of the game. Like, you don't know where it came from before you, you're going to have a limited scope. You're going to have a limited perspective. Like, you're not going to be able to have all the tools that you need to be able to bring the greatness out of yourself. So it's absolutely necessary that you study the art form before you to see where it's going. And that's going to help you develop your perspective as an artist.
Okay. What about the business aspect? How did you figure out the business aspect of poetry?
Man, through trial and error. What I learned in business is that you pay for what you don't know. You pay for that in your pocket. That's whether you're getting paid for your art or not. Many artists, they lack the ability to balance the art and the business side of things. And what I learned is that both of those things are absolutely important to your evolution as an artist. If you don't bring on somebody that knows the business, or if you don't learn the business, that's how you end up getting terms like starving artists. Mm. And that's some shit I ain't willing to do.
Most definitely.
I ain't trying to starve. I got a wife to support, and I'm a creator. So as a creator, there's no limits on your creativity. Mm-hmm. When you understand what that really means.
Most definitely.
But most of us, we pigeonhole ourselves. You heard me in the beginning say that I'm a poet, a speaker, an author, so forth and so on. All of that stuff came from poetry. It comes from creative language. It comes from you being able to understand that there's something that you can create, and then that right there has a baby, right? Mm-hmm. So I like to say it this way: your creativity can have offspring, and when that creativity has offspring, what it does is it furthers your talents, and it furthers the things that you can do with the spoken word, because everything begins with the spoken word, whether it's written or not. Everything starts with the spoken word. So when we can understand that and we can harness that, we can be able to take advantage of it. Now that's on the art side. The business side says, okay, what I'm doing here, it's worthy of compensation, right? So it's you putting a worth on that art that you put your blood, sweat, and tears into, and use your experience to be able to cultivate. Now you can take that very thing and you can say, okay, let me study the market and let me see what's going on in the market. Let me see what poets are charging. Let me see the guy that's at the top or the woman that's at the top. Let me see why they're getting paid for doing what they're doing. Let me see the poet that's in this area, that's sharing space with me, that's getting paid. Let me see why he or she is getting paid. Let me see what that's all about. Let me see what they're doing creatively. Let me see what they're creating. Let me see what their merchandise is all about. Let me see how they brand themselves. Let me see what's important to them to bring in the way of value to whoever they're serving, right? So I take this very same principles that I learned in corporate America, things that I learned from the hood. I take those same things and I apply it to what I do as an artist. Because in my book, ain't no such thing as starving artists. There's either artists that knows the business or there's artists that don't know the business.
Speaking in your book, you do have a book. What's the name of your book again?
The name of my book is The 30 Love Laws, man.
And tell me how did you come up with that title? Because you know when you as an author, you have a lot of titles, and then one title just go, boom, that's it.
Shoot, man, I can tell you at least 12 to 13 titles that it was going to be before the 30 Love Laws, man. But what I got into, as I was writing the book, just shortly before, I got into different things like the law of attractions, studying universal laws, universal principles, and stuff like that. So I said, well, you know, this is one subject matter that eludes almost everybody at some point. But it's something that everybody wants to experience. It's something that needs an explanation. It's something that needs a little bit more detailed research than what we have in the dictionary. So let me devote some time to that. After that divorce, I'm like, I ain't willing to go through this pain no more, man. Right. This is BS. So for me, I said, you know what? Let me focus on this one word because I'm analytical by nature. So I said, okay, if I focus on this one area, if I focus on this one thing and go find the people that are either experts in the space, that's spiritually, that's psychologically, and there's people that's actually going through it, that's getting it right. So my thing is, how do they get it right? First, let me start with that question and let me expound on that. And brother, that's what I did, man. It took me 15 years to put that together. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of. It's something that I'm able to reap the benefit of now. Mm-hmm. Being in a great marriage, man, with one of the most beautiful human beings that I've ever met. I get the privilege of calling her my wife. So it's things like that, man, that once you turn your attention to, you can create something beautiful from. Pain created it, man. So I say that. But going through all of the different titles, man, it was just one of those things that I said it has to be clear and it has to be concise. It has to be something that's easy, for people to relate to, and it has to speak to that pain, but also through the lens of solution. So that was the whole outlook with the title of the book.
What's the greatest compliment you received from the book?
Oh man, how easily readable it is. How everything that's in that book applies on some level to everybody's life. And I've had multiple people buy the books. It's been out. It's been out since 2016. I put it out in February 2016, and I'm still selling them at events. And it's people are making it hard for me to sit down and create my next book based on all of the the compliments and the different things that I do concerning the book, whether it's workshops or book signings or performances and stuff like that to speak about the book. So man, it's been a blessing, man.
Yeah. It's crazy to me that you went the route opposed to doing a poetry book. Could have been easy for you. You could have been through 15 poetry books because you write a lot, right? So what made you make the choice of, okay, I'm gonna help people not go through that pain, opposed to just putting a poetry book out? And also, explain the pain. Explain what that felt like, so other men that've been through this, they can connect to what that is and see how to get through that. And how did you get through it?
Oh man, shoot, man, that's layered. There's a lot of stuff going on, man, in that thought process, man. But so I'll just start with the book and the first question that you asked. Now concerning that book, man, and getting into the pain, there's this thing with men where we want to put on the macho bravado and nothing hurts us and all of that stuff. The only way to effectively attack a strong man is getting to his heart, getting to his mind, affecting him emotionally.
Most definitely.
And that was my thing. Nothing could really touch me, as far as who I knew myself to be. That was from the very beginning, leaving home at such an early age, joining the military and stuff like that. Just being able to move on my own say-so. I've always been a bit of my own man, even if I was a boy. I felt like, okay, I'm making this move as a man is what it is. And that's, some of that stuff was birth and some of the experiences in the street or whatever the case is. But anyway, getting back to the outlook on the pain, man, it's simple. I said, man, this pain, this is crazy. It's a feeling that I've never felt before. It's uncomfortable. I don't like the shit. So my thing is, let me just confront the bully. And the bully was the pain. How it affected me emotionally. My thing is this. I've always been a solution-oriented person. So my thing is, okay, if I go through this once, what's going to allow me not to be able to go through it again? So I said, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to find what this word is about. First thing I did was sit down and look at it in a dictionary. I'm like, okay, it explains a piece of it, but it's got to be more. Every academic resource that you may see, whether we're talking a dictionary or others, it talks about the emotional outlook on love, but it has to be deeper than that. So I said, there's no way that the emotional element of what this thing is all about, how it's defined, it can strictly be that. So if you look at other resources, if you look in the Bible, right, it talks about love, it defines it and stuff like that. But my problem was not seeing it right before my eyes in a certain way and not having it be explained that this is what this is, right? Like we all experience love, whether it's mother, father, so forth and so on. That's family love. That's different than an intimate love with somebody that's not your family.
Most definitely.
Right? So it's different. So I said, let me attack that. Let me see what that thing is all about. So I can conquer this pain and see what I'm doing wrong. Because most people, they blame somebody on the outside of them. It's them, they did this wrong, right? They did this to me, but I've never been a victim. So that couldn't last for long. So I said, okay, well, what am I doing? What can I own 100%? And that's me not having a proper definition of it. And I know some people say that, well, there's no, you can't define the word love. And my challenge to that is if you can't define it and we live a human existence, then how can you attain it? Because everything that we understand as a definition. Like we understand the parameters of that thing that we're describing, that we're focused on. So I said, okay, if I don't do that with love, then it will continue to elude me. And being solution oriented, that ain't a good enough answer.
Most definitely.
So that's where we were with just looking at the pain and addressing that, going through the process of a marriage and divorce, and then I got engaged again, but something didn't quite feel right. We weren't on the same page, so I said, okay, if this is going to lead me back to where I was, let's go ahead and cut the cord and do it amicably. And I just want to say this: One of the other things that I see with people is they blame the other person that they were in the relationship with. But what I've learned throughout the process is once we own our own situation and blame, because the people that I was attached to, my ex-wife, my ex-fiance, great people in their own respects. So that was one consistent thing in both of those scenarios. And that one thing was me. So that's what I had to deal with. And the experience with those women actually made me a better person. Because the best mirror that you can hold to yourself is to have someone that's with you on a consistent basis, that's telling you what you are and what you're not, being the closest person to you outside of your own ego and what you see you see in the mirror. So that was a great experience for me, being able to have that. So that's turning the pain into victory, I'll say. And I'm able to reap the benefits of not being a victim, saying, okay, all of this is on me. So now me and my wife, we can do what we do and have this great relationship, taking those lessons and actually applying them to life. There's a saying that goes that knowledge is power, and that's only a part of the equation. So it has to be knowledge plus the actions of knowledge and application. That's where the power lies, man.
How was you able to shed your ego and get past not blaming them and taking ownership for some things you might have didn't even do wrong? How was you able to do that? Because most people can't not let ego get in the way and say, you know what, it's time for me to go out here and rip and run and sleep with a whole bunch. Just, the nonsense.
Right.
How was you able to not let your ego drive you into insanity?
Well, I didn't. I didn't. But it's going back to that result. Because I did some ripping and running.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping with a bunch of different women and all of that stuff, trying to put a Band-Aid over the pain, right? But after a while, you start to see, okay, is this working for me or against me? And I'm a thinker, as a poet, we get a bit into philosophy and the thought process. We pull from those thoughts and those creative spaces and those experiences to create. So that love thing won't let you avoid. Because creating comes from a passionate place to be able to do it consistently. Just like I said, I've been doing it over 25 years. So you don't do anything over 25 years unless you're passionate about it or unless it's absolutely necessary for your survival. And with that being said, I just started to take a look and see, okay, these things aren't working for me in my life. So what can I do different?
How did you know it wasn't working for you? Did you feel empty? Like, what was it?
That's exactly it. Like, it started to be a repetitive cycle. There was no growth. I didn't feel the growth. I didn't see the growth.
But see how, it's so many men our age and older than us don't pay attention to that growth. Like, right. What was it in you to say, what is the piece in you to make you say, all right, I slept with a lot of women, this is not still working for me. I'm not getting out of it. What is the thing where as though it's like you knew to look for something that's going to give you that fulfilling love feeling opposed to sleep with multiple women and getting that empty nothing feeling? What is that in you? What is the piece that make you figure that part out? Do you think? And you understand my question?
Right. Absolutely.
Because there's so many men out here, but a lot of men don't look for that piece that you're looking for, that you look for and you fail.
Absolutely, man. I go back to, I created an acronym, or love is actually the acronym for a thought process that I've coined, right? And the acronym love is living on valuable energy, right? So at that point, I didn't see what was actually valuable about lives, my life or these women's lives, right? So that says to me that there's something wrong, right? The energy that I'm putting out, I'm not reaping any benefit from. So there was no value there. So with love being an acronym for living on valuable energy, my thing is, okay, I see what this is. Now let me go and find that value. All right, there has to be an exchange, right? If I'm putting out energy, I expect something to come back from that energy, right? Right, there's cause and effect, there's karma, so forth and so on. So I'm reaping I'm reaping something from these actions, but it's not fulfilling, right? So I'm getting some karma back, cause and effect is working, but not to my benefit, right? So when you sit back and you're thinking and you're looking at these things, it's like, wow, I'm doing something wrong. What am I doing wrong? Then how do I fix it? Where do I go from here? See, you were talking about other men, and I talk to young men and I talk to young women. And what I do as a relationship coach, I help people with their relationships, not just the relationship with the other person, their spouse, their mate, so forth and so on. The first relationship that you're having as an adult is your relationship with yourself. So I've always been cognizant of these things. Now, whether or not I knew how to apply them is something different. But if you consistently seek, you'll find.
How did you build a relationship with yourself? Because a lot of people don't know themselves, don't have a relationship with themselves. They have a relationship with what they believe society wants them to be, how they think they should act, and these different things. How did you, who gave you the information, or how did you guide yourself in a way to look for the information to find yourself?
Man, that's a great question. It started with me just by seeking. Right, just like I talked about being a student of poetry, seeing where it came from. I'm talking about going all the way back to Imhotep, like when most people go back. So they find Langston Hughes or the great James Baldwin, or somebody like that. But I had to go back to who I was from the very beginning. And now I'm talking about our ancestors. I'm talking about our original ancestors. I'm talking about the very top of recorded civilization. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about going back to ancient Kemet and going back to things like we've all heard the words, the writings on the wall, right? But most of us, we don't know what that is or where that comes from. The writing on the wall, the writing is on the wall of the pyramids that our ancestors left for us to know ourselves, right? So I went back that far, right? So I had to see who I was from the beginning to understand who I am right now. So it was just seeking myself. And there's also another saying that goes that you seek and you shall find, right? So I found myself inside of my ancestors. And the thing about spirit, the thing about blood is this. Blood never dies, and neither does spirit. Science calls it energy, right? So it always was and it always will be. A religion calls it God, right? So if you seek from that space, understand where you get this energy from. What's the root of it? Where did it come from? You seek that, you're going to find yourself and many more things. Things around you will start to make a bit more sense. But first and foremost, when you look in the mirror, that makes sense.
And when you say blood never died, break down that thought process or that philosophy, because I understand it, but some people might not understand it.
Absolutely. First and foremost, when we talk about death, our ancestors, they didn't see death in the way that we see it. It's a transitioning, right? So blood happens the same exact way. There's just a transition. The same blood that ran through our ancestors' veins is the same blood that runs through our veins, right? So if there's no cutoff period, as far as the human race is concerned, then that means the very same blood from the beginning, the same blood that exists today, right? So that's what we have to look at, and that's what we have to tie ourselves to. We often separate ourselves from, but we have to tie ourselves to.
What? Let me ask you this. Speaking of tying yourself to, how did you tie yourself into poetry? I mean, like, what does it mean to you? What does poetry mean to you?
So it means everything. Poetry is purpose, and I often say that at my shows. This ain't just poetry; it's purpose. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about going back to our ancestors. When I study folks like Imhotep, specifically, was the father of medicine. The first creator of the pyramids, created the step pyramids. I'm talking about he's just a master of anything he put his hands on. Recorded as the first multi-genius. He was deified, but he was also a poet, a high priest, counselor to the king. So if you look back in history, poets wrote the literature. So you would see that that literature from back then was poetic in nature, because it was poets that were writing. So when you find out things like this, and it's like, wow, okay. So now it goes from me writing my feelings down on a piece of paper or just expressing myself. So when you get to that point, when you seek for that amount of time, you see, okay, this is not just what I want to decide to do with my art. Now, some artists create that way, but some artists, they have a responsibility. So that's why I am now, to not just be a poet, not to just spit bars, not to just get in front of people and entertain them, but to teach what this thing, poetry, really is, and what it is to be a poet. See, me and poets ain't the same. We don't think the same, or we don't teach the same, we don't see things the same. But on the other end, we are the same, because we have the creative ability. The only difference is what we realize, what we respond to, how much of a student we are. For everybody that calls me a teacher, I respond to them, I'm also a student. And it'll always be that way. So that's what we have to be. And it may be a little confusing when I say that we aren't the same and we are the same, is because the choice is both of ours. That's what links us together. Like, we have a choice. This information exists. The writing's on the wall, right? So it becomes a thing that whether we decide to say, I'm gonna sit right here and all I'm gonna do is explain how I feel emotionally, what's going on with society's ills, or I'm gonna take a look at the broader picture. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint the picture that I think should be. I'm gonna create the foundation for painting a picture that says that regardless of what's going on right now, this is what can happen from a creator standpoint. Not just speak to what other people are doing to you or how you feel about what they're doing to you. If you're a creator, change it. That's what I mean by we're not the same. A lot of us, we don't recognize this thing. Some of us do, but a lot of us don't. Now, how are we the same? The information is available. You can be exactly what you decide to be that creates the change. That's what being a creative actually is. And I'm a full-time creative. That means that my thoughts create our livelihood. My thoughts create how me and my wife move, eat, pay bills, so forth and so on. And now she's a creative. She owns her time too, so she's a free black woman. So we can all do that as creatives. So how we're not the same is what I realize versus what they realize. How we are the same, the choice exists for both. Now it's how faithful are we? That's the difference.